She died holding an asp to her breast, or so we were told. But what if the truth was buried deeper, beneath politics, betrayal, and a tomb no one was meant to find? For over 2,000 years, a single question haunted archaeologists, historians, and treasure hunters alike: the final resting place of the last pharaoh. The woman who seduced two empires, defied Rome, and chose death on her own terms. But no monument, no mausoleum, no sarcophagus, only a vanishing trail of clues, and one stubborn legend passed down like sacred fire. Now, after centuries of silence, one discovery is rewriting everything we thought we knew about ancient Egypt and the fate of its final queen. What if Cleopatra never intended to be found? And what if she wasn't alone in that tomb? This is not just a story about an ancient queen. This is the unraveling of a 2,000-year conspiracy, a war for legacy, a final act of defiance, scripted in limestone, hidden beneath the sands, and sealed by gods. To understand how we got here, we must return to a world torn between empires, a dying dynasty, a love affair weaponized as statecraft, a queen trained in the secrets of the Library of Alexandria, more scholar than seductress. This is ancient Egypt, explained. And this is the moment Cleopatra's silence ends. The lost queen before the tomb, before the asp, before Rome wrote her legacy in the language of scandal. There was simply Cleopatra, the seventh Philopator, a girl born not in a golden cradle, but into a crumbling dynasty already half swallowed by the Nile. She entered the world in a kingdom gasping for breath. The once mighty Ptolemaic Empire, descendants of Alexander the Great's general, ruled not by Egyptian blood, but by Macedonian steel wrapped in silk. They were foreigners on the throne of the pharaohs, speaking Greek behind palace doors, while hieroglyphs faded into relics. And into that world came Cleopatra, a city more cosmopolitan than Rome, home to the great library, the world's beating heart of science, mathematics, astronomy, and forbidden texts lost to modern time. Here, Cleopatra wasn't raised as a mere royal ornament. She was groomed like a weapon. She learned 9 languages, not to charm, but to command. She read medical treatises and military histories. She didn't bathe in milk. She studied strategy. But history wouldn't let her be real. Rome would later carve her into a seductress, the woman who brought down Caesar and Antony. But that version, that's the Roman edition. We must remember, most of what we know about Cleopatra was written by her enemies. Her own words, burned with the library. Her rise wasn't elegant. She was exiled by her own brother, survived assassination attempts from her own sister. She came back, not with an army, but with a gamble. She would meet Rome's most dangerous man, Julius Caesar, and make the most dangerous move of her life. Not seduction. But what if that meeting wasn't fate? What if Cleopatra had planned it years in advance, and Julius Caesar had simply walked into her design? Because history doesn't remember the serpent. It forgets the strategist who trained it. Power in ancient Egypt was never inherited peacefully. It was bled into. The Ptolemies didn't pass down crowns. They passed down betrayal. Cleopatra's blood wasn't Egyptian. It was pure Macedonian Greek, traced straight to Ptolemy Soter, one of Alexander the Great's fiercest generals. But over generations, the line had curdled. She learned 9 languages, not to charm, but to command. She read medical treatises and military histories. She didn't bathe in milk. She studied strategy. Brothers married sisters. Sisters poisoned brothers. Aunt strangled niece. Their family tree wasn't pruned. It was butchered. And in that twisted forest grew a girl watching it all. Cleopatra VII. She wasn't the favorite. She wasn't meant to rule, but she listened, she watched, she learned. At 7, she began copying diplomatic letters. At 10, she debated Alexandrian scholars. At 12, she practiced speaking in Egyptian, the sacred tongue her royal ancestors had refused to learn. Not to flatter the priests, to own them. And there was something else, a secret lesson only a few in the palace understood. Not all thrones are taken by war, some are taken by watching. And Cleopatra? She was already memorizing the enemy. Roman history calls her manipulative, but her psychological profile, reconstructed through rare papyrus fragments and temple records, says otherwise. She was a master of controlled silence, a woman who only spoke to strike, like a viper that waits before biting. Ambition? Not for luxury. She once spent 3 years in exile in the desert with no army, no gold, and no allies. She returned not with a fleet, but with the will of Rome in her palm. She didn't seduce Caesar. She anticipated him. Charm? That came later. But what she truly mastered was a narrative control, the ability to shape how she was seen by Egypt, by Rome, by history itself. She spoke 9 languages fluently, not to entertain, but to negotiate without translators, to pierce the lie before it was spoken. She read Persian astronomy, Indian alchemy, and Carthaginian naval strategy. Each skill, another blade, but all of it, the intellect, the training, the preparation, it was for one single confrontation. A moment so dangerous, she smuggled herself inside a carpet to make it happen. And from that rolled linen, history unraveled. In the marble vaults of Alexandria's great library, a scroll was hidden. Its author, unknown. Its subject, forbidden. Its final line, Egypt is not conquered, it seduces. This is the real war between Rome and Egypt, not fought with legions, but with influence. Rome wasn't a republic anymore. It was a theater of ambition, and the audience was armed. Crassus had just died at Carrhae, his head used as a prop in a Parthian play. Pompey controlled the Senate, but his legions were fading. Caesar, triumphant in Gaul, beloved by the poor, feared by everyone else. The world expected civil war. What no one expected was that a foreign queen would become the hinge of history. Ptolemaic Egypt was ancient, but it was also fractured and ruled by foreigners pretending to be pharaohs. Cleopatra VII was different. She spoke Egyptian, the first ruler in centuries to do so. She read Homer and Herodotus, but also sacred scrolls from Karnak. Her tutors taught her not just philosophy, but geopolitical chess. She knew that Rome wanted Alexandria, not for glory, but for grain. And her brother's advisors? They wanted her gone. Pompey arrived believing Egypt owed him safety. He was once its patron, but Egypt was broke, and Rome was the only buyer left. So the boy king's court made a choice. Kill the past, bet on the future. They stabbed Pompey in the surf. Then they preserved his head in brine, packed it in a basket of salt, and offered it to Caesar like a gift. But when Caesar opened it, he didn't thank them. He wept, because Pompey wasn't just a rival, he was Rome. Cleopatra had been exiled by her brother, but her spies told her Caesar had arrived. She didn't request an audience. She staged an entrance, wrapped in linen, smuggled across enemy lines, unfurled at Caesar's feet like a gift, but with eyes wide open. He expected a supplicant. He met an equal. And in that room, and with no scrolls, no senators, no armies, the future was decided. But Cleopatra was not seducing Caesar. She was recruiting him, What she needed wasn't romance. It was war. And that war would burn the Nile red. They said she was beautiful, but what they feared was that she understood the game. It was 49 BCE. Rome had become a house with no doors, open to ambition, bleeding from within. In the east, Cleopatra did not send armies. She sent grain. When Rome starves, the throne shakes, and the one man who could control that chaos was already watching her. When Julius Caesar arrived in Alexandria under the guise of settling a family dispute, he found a civil war and a queen in exile. But she did not beg. She did not seduce. She engineered. Wrapped in a rug, smuggled past enemy guards, theatrics for the Senate perhaps. But for Cleopatra, it was a test. Could this man be bought with vision instead of gold? He could. What she gave Caesar wasn't flesh. It was the idea of empire. Her empire. Caesarian. A name too dangerous to speak in Rome and too important to erase in Egypt. Historians still debate whether Caesar ever signed the scroll acknowledging him. But Cleopatra kept 10 copies, all hidden. One was discovered in 1898, sealed with the symbol of the Bull of Apis, the god of eternal kingship. He was not born to rule Rome, he was born to end it. Octavian never spoke his name in public, but behind closed doors he referred to him by a different word. The shadow. On the Ides of March, when Caesar fell, no one stabbed Cleopatra. But that night, she burned every record of Caesarian's paternity in Alexandria. Why? Because power in Rome was claimed with blood. But in Egypt, it was stolen through silence. Cleopatra did not fall in love with Antony. She tested him. When she met him at Tarsus, she had already seen how Rome could fracture and consume itself. She needed to know, could this Roman be controlled? And Antony, he wasn't merely enchanted, he was calculating. After Caesar's death, Rome was torn between memory and ambition. Aligning with Egypt meant resources, loyal fleets, and an Eastern throne. They weren't lovers at first, they were co-conspirators. Antony gave Cleopatra territory. Cleopatra gave Antony legitimacy. But what neither gave was total trust. The birth of twins, Alexander Helios and Cleopatra Selene, wasn't just dynastic, it was a trap for succession. Each child tied one parent to the other. Neither could defect without shattering their own future. Back in Rome, Octavian weaponized the entire story. He declared that Antony had married a foreign queen, that he planned to move Rome's capital to Alexandria. He wasn't far off. Hidden correspondence between the two lovers, reported in fragments of Suetonius' lost letters and supported by Cassius Dio, suggests a secret plan to install Caesarion, Cleopatra's son by Julius Caesar, as the new ruler of the unified empire. Antony wasn't just betraying Octavian, he was attempting to replace him. Why did she order a separate tomb away from the Ptolemaic necropolis, hidden beneath a temple of Osiris? Why were her personal archives, every scroll from her reign, burned before the siege of Alexandria? Because Cleopatra knew something no one else did, that stories outlive empires, and she was about to rewrite her ending. Antony and Cleopatra did not rule as one. Cleopatra funded him, outmaneuvered him, prepared for his failure. She controlled Egypt's wealth. She commanded her own naval units. She negotiated independently with Eastern satraps of the Roman East. Meanwhile, Antony's Roman generals, Agrippa chief among them, were leaking intelligence back to Octavian. The Battle of Actium wasn't lost at sea. It was lost in letters. Asius Dio claims she fled in fear, but Strabo, a near contemporary who lived in Egypt, implied otherwise. The queen's ships withdrew with order, carrying with them the treasury of grain and coin. She wasn't abandoning Antony, she was preserving Egypt. What if Cleopatra never intended to win at Actium? What if she gambled Antony to buy time to fortify Alexandria? Not for survival, but for immortality. The official Roman version, told by Plutarch, is poetic: a snake, a silent queen, a noble death. But consider this: no asp venom acts fast enough to kill in minutes. No autopsy was ever recorded. Her handmaidens, Charmian and Iris, died moments after her. Could poison be hidden in a hairpin, or was Cleopatra helped to die? The historian Lucan, writing earlier than Plutarch, suggested another version. Her death was arranged, swift and staged, for the eyes of Rome. Octavian didn't destroy Cleopatra's tomb. He ordered it sealed. That's why no classical source describes its location. The last verified sighting was by a Roman soldier, Lucius Pinarius, who guarded the tomb for 3 days before the doors were closed. Forever. Modern excavations at Taposiris Magna, near Lake Mario, hint at secret tunnels and underground chambers not yet breached. Egyptian archaeologist Dr. Kathleen Martinez argues, if the queen planned her defeat, she also planned her afterlife. Not in a pharaoh's tomb, but as a goddess. If Cleopatra staged her death, outwitted the empire, and vanished beneath the sands of Taposiris Magna, then why has no one found her tomb in over 2,000 years? More than 170 pharaohs ruled Egypt. We found the tombs of nearly all of them, except one, the only one who ruled as both queen and goddess, Cleopatra. Cleopatra was the only Ptolemaic ruler who fused Greek and Egyptian theology into her personal brand. She modeled herself after Isis, the goddess who resurrected Osiris. This wasn't just propaganda, it was a blueprint for burial. To find Cleopatra's tomb, you must stop looking for a queen. You must start looking for a resurrection ritual. Augustus defeated her. He controlled the narrative. His Res Gestae mentions her defeat, not her death. Romans had a history of damnatio memoriae, erasing enemies from history. So what if her tomb wasn't just lost, but buried on purpose? Strabo says Cleopatra's mausoleum was near the palace, but modern Alexandria is buried under meters of silt and seawater. In 1996, sonar scans showed structures beneath the harbor. In 2008, divers found columns, statues, and sphinxes. It may not be that her tomb vanished, but that it sank. 45 kilometers west of Alexandria, a temple to Osiris, a symbol of death and rebirth, Martinez's team found tombs sealed for 2,000 years, a woman buried with a diadem and royal jewelry, murals of Isis and Osiris together, but still, no definitive body. Why? Because Cleopatra may not be in one place, but split across many, following the Osirian myth. Osiris was cut into 14 pieces, scattered across Egypt. Cleopatra, as Isis, would follow the same blueprint. Divide her remains, force her enemies to chase ghosts. What if Cleopatra wasn't buried in one tomb, but in a ritual across several? Martinez's latest digs have identified a sealed corridor leading below the temple. Lighter scans show an antechamber buried under rubble and limestone. It's never been opened. It's there, we just haven't broken through yet. But when we do, history will have to rewrite itself. 30 BCE, after Cleopatra's and Antony's deaths, Octavian, Augustus, begins to solidify his reign over Rome, initiating a new chapter in world history. Cleopatra's body, draped in the royal garb of Egypt, was buried with great ceremony. But that's where the story ends, or so it seems. The tomb's location remains a mystery, as elusive as the queen herself. Historical records differ on how Cleopatra's funeral unfolded. Some sources hint at a grand tomb, others suggest it was an understated burial, an anticlimax for a ruler who had lived with immense spectacle. Octavian, now Augustus, may have seen Cleopatra's death as a victory, but he knew her legacy could not be erased easily. Her story lived on in the hearts of millions in Egypt and Rome, as well as in the eyes of Caesarion, her son with Julius Caesar. Was the tomb destroyed to erase her memory? Or was it hidden, knowing that one day someone would dare to search? But the tomb isn't the only thing Rome sought to erase. The son of Caesar was no less a threat to Augustus's claim. Caesarion, the living proof of Cleopatra's union with Caesar, was not just a boy. He was Rome's most dangerous memory, for his existence cast a shadow over Augustus's legitimacy. Caesarion's death remains shrouded in mystery. Plutarch offers conflicting narratives. Some say he was murdered by Augustus's orders. Others claim he died in exile, his fate never fully revealed. What's certain is that the image of Caesarion did not fit the narrative Augustus needed. Rome could not have a man bearing Caesar's name, especially not one in Egypt, where Cleopatra's legacy could inspire rebellion. Was Caesarion simply a casualty of Augustus's rise? Or was he part of a larger scheme to cement Roman power? What of the final words of Caesarion, whispered in Egypt's dying light? What truth did he know about Cleopatra's legacy? When Augustus wrote his Res Gestae, he omitted her name, but not without reason, for Cleopatra's memory threatened not only his reign, but the very myth he was constructing about Rome's victory. Augustus initiated a systematic erasure of Cleopatra from history, ensuring that her depiction would be one of defeat rather than triumph. Roman propaganda turned Cleopatra into the ultimate enemy, a manipulative foreigner, a seductress. Suetonius would later describe Cleopatra as a woman of depravity. Yet Augustus chose not to mention her directly, erasing her from the narrative entirely. But why disappear her entirely? Perhaps Augustus feared something far more dangerous: Cleopatra's strength. Yet the queen's legacy was too strong to be buried. It lived on in myths, whispers, and an undiscovered tomb. In the centuries that followed, writers like Plutarch and Dio crafted tales of Cleopatra, stories not of a ruler, but of a myth. Was she the lover of two mighty men? Or was she a victim of circumstance? The myth of Cleopatra flourished, shaped by those who wanted to control her legacy. She became an icon of romance, but in truth, her political maneuvering was far more sophisticated. Shakespeare would later capture her in his tragedy, casting her as the ultimate lover, doomed by her love for Antony. But where does the reality lie? What parts of her life were lost to time, and what was fabricated? The tomb that lies somewhere beneath Egypt's sands, untouched for millennia, may hold more than Cleopatra's bones. It might hold the keys to unlocking her true story. If Cleopatra's tomb were found today, what would it reveal about Rome's greatest fear? 30 BCE. The ancient world is at a crossroads. Cleopatra's death signals the fall of Egypt and the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty. Rome, now under Augustus, begins its imperial expansion. Cleopatra's tomb is lost to history as Augustus's regime takes control of Egypt and its symbolic legacy. Cleopatra, the last ruler of Egypt, her death marks the collapse of an ancient civilization and its integration into the Roman Empire. Her personal and political legacy is debated to this day. Plutarch, Strabo, Appian, key figures whose historical writings provide fragmented and often contradictory accounts of Cleopatra's death and burial. For over 2 millennia, Cleopatra's tomb has remained a mystery. The ancient historians who chronicled her life left us clues, but their fragmented accounts offer no definitive answers. How could this queen, who once ruled the wealthiest civilization of her time, leave behind such an elusive legacy? Plutarch writes of Cleopatra's death with emotion, painting a picture of a woman who sought to be buried beside her lover, Mark Antony. Yet in his account, the tomb's location remains a secret. Strabo offers a brief mention of Alexandria as the possible burial site, but his description is vague, leaving us with little to grasp. Appian narrates Cleopatra's final moments, but remains silent on the crucial detail. Where was she buried? These gaps in historical accounts speak volumes. But could the silences of ancient historians be hiding something much more profound? Could these seemingly incomplete records be part of a larger narrative? What might they be trying to tell us about Cleopatra's burial? If Cleopatra chose her final resting place, could it have been a statement of defiance? Was she asserting Egypt's sovereignty in death? Or was she simply making a practical decision forced by the political circumstances of her time? It's widely believed that Cleopatra would have been buried with the grandeur befitting Egypt's last queen. Some argue her tomb would be located within Alexandria, in proximity to the royal tombs, while others suggest a more remote site, somewhere hidden from the eyes of Rome. Roman propaganda, driven by Augustus's regime, erases much of Cleopatra's Egyptian legacy. Therefore, could her tomb have been deliberately hidden, not just from the public, but from the world itself? Was this an act of rebellion by Cleopatra, or simply an inevitable consequence of her downfall? Was Cleopatra's final wish to be buried in Egypt, far from the eyes of Rome's imperial ambitions? Or did Rome's political machinery play a role in her tomb's disappearance? What if her tomb was hidden for a reason, something the Romans feared? Hidden in plain sight on the outskirts of Alexandria lies Taposiris Magna, a site that could very well hold the final remains of Egypt's most famous queen. But could Cleopatra have been buried here? Or is this just another red herring in a centuries-old mystery? Archaeologists have long been fascinated by Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple complex that contains significant Ptolemaic artifacts and burial crypts. Excavations at the site have uncovered coins, inscriptions, and statues, many with direct connections to the Ptolemaic royal family. The site is close to Alexandria, where Cleopatra ruled, and its remoteness could have been strategic. The proximity to Egypt's capital makes it a potential site for Cleopatra's secret burial, away from the eyes of Augustus's forces. Could Taposiris Magna be the final sanctuary of Cleopatra? If it is, what secrets does the site hold about her reign, her politics, and her defiant stand against Rome? As archaeologists prepare to delve deeper into the site, could they be on the verge of uncovering Cleopatra's final secret? New discoveries in Taposiris Magna are opening fresh possibilities. Could the tomb of Cleopatra still be waiting to be uncovered, tucked away in the depths of history? In recent years, excavations have turned up coins bearing the image of Cleopatra, as well as a statue of Isis, a goddess Cleopatra was often associated with. But the biggest discovery lies in the burial crypts, unexplored and untouched. Could these crypts hold the remains of Cleopatra and Antony, whose fates were intertwined in life and death? The evidence is mounting, but so too is the mystery. The search is ongoing. Could the tomb of Cleopatra still be hidden beneath the sands, waiting for the world to discover its secrets? As the sands of Egypt continue to yield their secrets, one question persists. Will Cleopatra's tomb ever be found, or will it remain an eternal enigma in the heart of Alexandria? For Augustus, Cleopatra's tomb wasn't just about finding her body, it was about burying a powerful symbol of defiance. a reminder of Rome's first defeat. After Cleopatra's death in 30 BCE, Augustus, as Rome's newly crowned emperor, did more than conquer Egypt. He faced a deep-seated psychological challenge. How could he erase Cleopatra's symbolic presence, a woman who had once nearly brought down the might of Rome? The hidden tomb. Augustus didn't just want Cleopatra dead. He wanted her legacy obliterated. Her tomb, an eternal reminder of her strength and influence, became a target. Historians suggest that early Roman expeditions weren't simply searching for a grave, but for a powerful statement. Cleopatra's tomb, hidden in Alexandria, wasn't just a physical object, it was a weapon of memory and identity. In the pursuit of Cleopatra's tomb, did Rome fear the power of her legacy more than her body? Augustus may have already had the tomb's location figured out, but he chose to hide it deliberately. Why would he erase the most potent symbol of Cleopatra's reign? Was it to make the statement that her legacy, too, would be buried in the sands of time? This first chapter isn't about failure. It's about the psychological warfare of silencing the defeated. Was the tomb hidden to erase Cleopatra's legacy, or was something far more symbolic at play? Napoleon's thirst for Cleopatra's tomb went beyond treasure. It was about control, understanding, and completing an ancient puzzle that eluded the greatest minds of history. By the time Napoleon arrived in Egypt in 1798, Cleopatra had long since become a myth, a subject of fascination for Europe. Napoleon's quest to find her tomb wasn't just about imperial ambition. It was about understanding a past civilization whose mysteries had been lost to time. Napoleon, driven by intellectual curiosity and an almost obsessive romanticization of Egypt's past, believed that unlocking its greatest secret, Cleopatra's tomb, could solidify his legacy. His men uncovered the Rosetta Stone, a great triumph. Yet Cleopatra's tomb remained elusive. Napoleon's obsession with Egypt was about much more than power. He saw Cleopatra as a figure whose intelligence, ambition, and romantic entanglement with power mirrored his own desires. Why was Napoleon obsessed with the puzzle of Cleopatra's tomb? Could it have been a mirror of his own quest for immortality? And was there a deeper emotional connection to the woman who had once ruled Egypt? Could Napoleon have failed to find Cleopatra's tomb because his obsession clouded his judgment? Or was it hidden purposefully by forces far more entrenched in the sands of time than his armies could ever uncover? What if Napoleon never failed? What if the tomb was deliberately kept from him and others like him for reasons deeper than we know? The discovery of Cleopatra's tomb in the 20th century was more than an archaeological quest. It was a race against time to find what had been buried for thousands of years. The early 20th century saw the rise of Egyptology, a field that became almost synonymous with the search for Cleopatra. Archaeologists scoured Alexandria, digging into every possible nook and cranny for Cleopatra's final resting place. As modern-day archaeologists focused on Taposiris Magna, a new narrative began to emerge. The ancient temple, previously overlooked, showed signs of having close ties to Cleopatra. Coins bearing her image, inscriptions linking her reign to this temple. These were clues, but they were fragmented. What was so special about Taposiris Magna? Why were clues to Cleopatra's tomb scattered throughout the area, yet so difficult to piece together? The advent of modern technology, including ground-penetrating radar, allowed archaeologists to peer beneath the earth. But still, nothing conclusive was found. How was it possible that modern science could uncover countless treasures from Egypt's past but failed to locate the one tomb that mattered most? Was Cleopatra's tomb never meant to be found? Or did something perhaps a deeper force, guard the tomb's secrets more fiercely than ever before. Napoleon's ambition extended far beyond conquering lands. It was a conquest of history itself. But what did he truly seek beneath Egypt's scorching sands? In 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte set foot in Egypt not merely as a military leader, but as an intellectual conqueror. Alongside his army, he brought a team of scholars, artists, and scientists tasked with documenting the ancient land's treasures. But among all the mysteries of Egypt, one consumed them entirely: the legendary tomb of Cleopatra. Napoleon's invasion was not just about territorial conquest, it was an academic mission. Led by scholars like Jean-François Champollion, who would later decipher the Rosetta Stone, they ventured into Alexandria and the surrounding areas, searching for Cleopatra's final resting place. Despite their brilliant minds, they failed to find what they sought. So why did Napoleon's scholars fail where countless others had also failed? Was Cleopatra's tomb simply too elusive, or were there deeper, hidden forces that kept it buried? Napoleon's battle with Egypt's legacy. Napoleon, who sought to be remembered as a great conqueror, might have had more in mind than simply locating Cleopatra's tomb. As a figure deeply invested in Egypt's past, he understood the political and symbolic power Cleopatra represented. His failure to uncover her tomb is not just a footnote in history, it's a testament to the political and cultural forces at play. Could it be that, in Napoleon's efforts to conquer history, the tomb itself resisted discovery? Could Napoleon's failed quest be part of a larger political struggle to suppress the memory of Cleopatra's defiance against Rome? What if Cleopatra's tomb wasn't just hidden by time, but by design? What if it was never meant to be found? After Cleopatra's death, the Roman Empire sought to erase every trace of her legacy. The political erasure of her reign, combined with the intrigue surrounding her tomb, set the stage for centuries of frustration in the search for it. Augustus, who inherited Rome's empire after Cleopatra's demise, may have deliberately ensured the obscurity of Cleopatra's tomb. After all, she symbolized defiance, and her tomb would have become a potent symbol of Roman weakness. To prevent any resurgence of Egyptian power, could Augustus have gone to great lengths to keep her burial site lost? But was it merely politics that concealed Cleopatra's tomb? Or was it something more? Perhaps the religious and symbolic significance of her final resting place made it impossible to uncover. The tomb wasn't just a grave. It was likely a sacred site, linked to Egypt's deeply ingrained beliefs about death and the afterlife. Could modern archaeologists have misunderstood the rituals surrounding her tomb's design, making it impossible to uncover until the mysteries of Egyptian religion were understood? Was Cleopatra's tomb more than a final resting place? What if it held secrets that made its discovery too dangerous for history? By the early 1900s, the world had made incredible advancements in technology, yet Cleopatra's tomb remained just as elusive. Was the key to its discovery hidden in plain sight? As Egyptology boomed in the early 20th century, the search for Cleopatra's tomb intensified. Egyptologists and archaeologists began exploring sites like Taposiris Magna, which some believed to be Cleopatra's final resting place. Yet despite evidence like coins bearing her likeness, no one could locate the tomb. The challenges of the 20th century, early digs brought discoveries, but Cleopatra's tomb was nowhere to be found. Could it be that local political pressures, combined with religious significance, were preventing archaeologists from digging deeper into the area? What were the forces at play, and how did the political climate shape the direction of these excavations? What if the reason Cleopatra's tomb hasn't been found yet is that its discovery could shift the very balance of power in the world. Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt who defied Rome, has long been a figure of myth. But what if the truth is far more extraordinary than we've ever imagined? The tomb of Egypt's last queen, hidden for millennia, may be found in the ruins of a forgotten city, where the truth lies buried beneath the sands. This city, Taposiris Magna, has long held secrets far greater than we ever realized. Cleopatra's rise wasn't just about charm or beauty. Behind her stunning intellect and multilingual prowess was a ruler capable of matching wits with the greatest minds of Rome. She played a dangerous game of political survival, balancing her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony against the overwhelming power of Augustus. But beneath this political facade lay a woman determined to secure Egypt's legacy and her own. Was Taposiris Magna her final strategy? Cleopatra, who had built alliances with Rome's most powerful figures, may have chosen this city as a final stand. Not just a tomb, but a statement. The burial site would not just symbolize Egypt's past glory, but potentially become a rallying cry for future generations. In choosing Taposiris Magna, was Cleopatra protecting herself from Rome, or was she simply ensuring her dynasty's continuity? Cleopatra's tomb was more than a simple final resting place. It could have been a symbolic last act of defiance against the Roman Empire. Choosing Taposiris Magna could have been a final message to future generations, hidden from Rome's conquering eyes. While history moved on, the ruins of Taposiris Magna remained silent. The forgotten city, long abandoned, holds whispers of a queen's final resting place. Could the remains of Cleopatra's kingdom lie within these tombs? Archaeological digs have begun to reveal clues that were overlooked for centuries. 1. The first clues. The first excavation in the early 2000s revealed startling evidence. Coins bearing Cleopatra's likeness, inscriptions that suggested royal associations, and strange statues in the ruins. These were not merely relics from a bygone city. They were markers, possibly deliberately placed, signaling the presence of something far more significant. 2. The political significance. As the tombs began to open, researchers encountered signs of heavy Roman influence alongside Egyptian burial practices. What could this fusion of cultures tell us about Cleopatra's vision for Egypt's future? Was this a royal city designed to merge two worlds, one that would never be truly integrated? 3. The symbolism. Among the many discoveries were statues that seemed deliberately erased, as though guarding something. Were these guardians meant to protect Cleopatra's secrets, or did they hold symbolic significance regarding her role as Egypt's last queen? Cleopatra was erased from history. After her death, Augustus ensured that her legacy would be nothing more than a threat to Rome's image. But in the ruins of Taposiris Magna, the whispers of a queen's defiance still echo, daring us to uncover the truth. The political forces that erased Cleopatra's memory after her death are profound. Augustus, fearing the rise of a new Egyptian nationalism, worked to eradicate her legacy. Yet Cleopatra's tomb, if found, could reveal the most poignant act of defiance. Was her tomb not just a final resting place, but a rallying cry to all who would resist Rome's dominance? The existence of a tomb at Taposiris Magna could have profound implications not just for archaeology, but for our understanding of Cleopatra's final defiance. Why would the tomb be so carefully hidden? And what can it teach us about Egypt's struggle to retain its identity, even after the death of its most famous queen? The tomb of Cleopatra may still remain hidden, but as the search continues, one thing becomes clear. Cleopatra's legacy was never fully erased. Her influence endures, not only in the myth she left behind, but in the very land she ruled. The search for her tomb will continue, perhaps for centuries more, but the Queen of the Nile's true story is far from forgotten. Taposiris Magna stands as a haunting symbol of Egypt's deep ties to its ancient gods, particularly Osiris, the god of the afterlife. Was it a coincidence that Cleopatra, the last ruler of Egypt, sought to be buried near this sacred city where myths and power converged? Did she envision herself rising as Isis alongside Osiris in a final defiance of Roman rule? Taposiris Magna's geographical location, set along the Mediterranean coast and near Alexandria, was not an arbitrary choice. Cleopatra's burial site may have been selected not only for its spiritual connotations, but for its strategic value as an entry point into the heart of Egypt's ancient mythos. With its proximity to Alexandria, the last stronghold of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the location held immense symbolic weight, reflecting both the queen's ties to Egypt's legacy and her defiance against the might of Rome. Taposiris Magna was dedicated to Osiris, whose mythology encapsulated themes of death and resurrection, appropriate for Cleopatra's symbolic rebirth in the afterlife. Cleopatra's reign was marked by a blending of political acumen with a deliberate association to divine power. The location was not only politically significant, but spiritually profound, underscoring her belief that her death and afterlife would be part of Egypt's enduring legacy, a potent assertion of power long after her physical demise. Cleopatra had always sought to embody the very essence of the Egyptian gods. In her final days, she chose not only to be remembered as a queen, but as a goddess. Could Taposiris Magna be the stage for her divine transformation, where her mortal body would align with Isis, her spiritual counterpart, forever? Cleopatra's identity was tied to her public persona as the goddess Isis, ruler of Egypt's eternal power. Her desire to be linked to Isis went beyond mere symbolism. It was a political tool and a statement of unassailable authority. This was a woman who not only controlled the affairs of Egypt, but actively shaped her public image to align with Egypt's divine protectress. The choice to be buried in a city dedicated to Osiris, a god central to Egyptian mythology, suggests that Cleopatra envisioned herself as an eternal force, transcending death and Roman control. The Temple of Osiris, long believed to be a center of rebirth, may have been the focal point of Cleopatra's plans for immortality. By choosing to be buried near Osiris's resting place, Cleopatra may have sought a resurrection of her rule, symbolically rising with Osiris after death. This wasn't just about a queen's final resting place. It was about a profound political and religious act designed to ensure her legacy. For centuries, Cleopatra's tomb remained a whisper in the sands, but modern archaeologists, like Kathleen Martinez, have begun to unravel the city's secrets. Could her excavations in Taposiris Magna finally reveal what Rome had longed to erase from history? Martinez's work at Taposiris Magna marks a pivotal moment in the search for Cleopatra's tomb. She unearthed remarkable artifacts, including statues and inscriptions, that appear to confirm the city's connection to Cleopatra's reign. These findings, while not conclusive, have added weight to the theory that Cleopatra's tomb lies hidden within these ancient walls. The artifacts suggest a site of royal burial, possibly linked to Cleopatra's ambition to merge herself with the divine. Excavations have uncovered items that reflect not only Cleopatra's time, but also her aspirations to align with Osiris and Isis in the afterlife. Inscriptions hint at a royal burial, but the true nature of the tomb remains elusive. The discoveries are tantalizing, but the final piece of the puzzle, Cleopatra's tomb itself, remains buried beneath layers of history. What does the city of Taposiris Magna with its sacred symbolism and royal artifacts, reveal about Cleopatra's vision for her death? The tomb of Cleopatra is not merely a physical place. It is a manifestation of her will to be remembered as Egypt's final, eternal ruler. As modern archaeologists continue to peel back the layers of history, the possibility that her tomb lies in Taposiris Magna grows ever more real. Will Cleopatra finally rise, not just as a queen, but as a goddess remembered for eternity? Cleopatra's tomb, hidden for millennia, buried beneath the sands of Egypt. The search for her final resting place is not just a story of archaeology, it is a battle for control over history itself. Before diving into the 21st century quest, it's crucial to understand why Cleopatra's tomb was so elusive. She was not just a queen, but a symbol of Egyptian power and defiance against Rome. Egypt's mythology, specifically the cult of Osiris, guided not just religious life, but burial practices. Kings and queens were buried in sites imbued with sacred significance. To them, the tomb was not simply a grave. It was a doorway to the afterlife, a place where the gods would come to guide their souls. But Cleopatra, the last of the Ptolemaic dynasty, had reasons to leave no trace. The mystery begins with her political strategy. Egypt had been in a constant battle for survival against the Roman Empire, and Cleopatra's alliance with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony was an act of survival. She needed to preserve Egypt's independence. But what if her tomb, like her reign, was carefully hidden from the eyes of both Rome and history? The true nature of her final resting place is not just about her physical death. It is about the symbolic defiance she built around her own legacy. The city of Taposiris Magna, located just west of Alexandria, had long been seen as a place of power. It was here, many believed, that Cleopatra chose to be buried, away from the interference of Roman conquest. But why this city, known for its strong association with Osiris, the god of the afterlife? Could the symbolism of this city point us to a deliberate hiding of her tomb, a place so sacred that even Rome could not erase its importance? As archaeologists began to dig deeper into Taposiris Magna, ancient coins bearing the faces of Cleopatra and Mark Antony were unearthed, startling evidence that the two may have planned their eternal resting place here. Yet the clues were still too vague. Was Cleopatra buried here, or was it a site chosen by her successors? The search for Cleopatra's tomb in modern times began during Napoleon's Egyptian campaign in the late 18th century. But it wasn't until the early 20th century, after Egypt gained independence, that significant archaeological work was done. Still, the tomb remained elusive. One of the most pivotal excavations began in the 1920s, led by British and Egyptian archaeologists. Yet the political and religious implications of finding Cleopatra's tomb put a halt to any major breakthroughs. As Egypt's heritage became intertwined with national pride, archaeologists were forced to work within a complex web of politics, local customs, and religious restrictions. Why, after all these years, did no one dare touch Cleopatra's resting place? Was it the power of Rome that still loomed large, even in the 20th century? In the 21st century, the dynamics of discovery changed radically. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced 3D scanning were game changers. New excavations at Taposiris Magna revealed long-hidden passages and sealed chambers that suggested a royal burial site, possibly the tomb of Cleopatra herself. However, modern-day archaeologists, particularly Dr. Zahi Hawass, caution that the search is far from over. Taposiris Magna, with its intricate network of tunnels and hidden chambers, still holds secrets yet to be uncovered. The deeper the teams dig, the more they encounter: shattered statues, fragments of Cleopatra's own life etched in the ruins. But a full excavation may be years away. Will these new discoveries finally give us the tomb of Cleopatra? Or will her final resting place remain just out of reach, a mystery that time itself refuses to reveal? What if Cleopatra's tomb was never meant to be found? The Romans, after all, had a vested interest in erasing her from history, portraying her as a seductress who brought Rome to its knees. Octavian, who later became Augustus, capitalized on this narrative, crafting a mythology around Cleopatra's death that emphasized defeat. He didn't want her remembered as a political powerhouse. He wanted her erased. Perhaps Cleopatra's tomb, whether in Taposiris Magna or elsewhere, was deliberately obscured by Roman propaganda, an attempt to control the narrative of her life. After all, what better way to deal with a ruler whose very existence threatened the empire than to deny her a proper burial or lasting legacy? Each piece of the puzzle seems to lead to Taposiris Magna, yet the tomb has never been found. Will modern archaeology succeed where previous efforts have failed? Despite the tremendous advances in archaeological methods, the tomb remains elusive. But as one scholar puts it, Cleopatra's tomb may not be the treasure we expect. It may not just be a place, it may be a symbol of Egypt's defiance, buried under centuries of political turbulence. Are we on the cusp of discovering Cleopatra's final resting place? Or has the tomb, like its queen, been shrouded in mystery, its secrets waiting for the next generation of archaeologists? The search for Cleopatra's tomb is a relentless quest for answers that will forever be tied to the intersection of history, politics, and technology. As new generations of archaeologists continue their work in Egypt, the question remains, will Cleopatra's tomb be discovered, or will it remain hidden in the sands? A mystery for future civilizations to solve or uncover. In the 21st century, the quest to find Cleopatra's tomb has entered a new phase, thanks to advancements in archaeological technology. Unlike traditional excavation methods that rely on digging through layers of earth, modern tools like LiDAR, light detection and ranging, and ground-penetrating radar, GPR, offer a non-invasive way to scan beneath the Earth's surface, revealing hidden structures with remarkable precision. These technologies have opened a window into the long-lost world of ancient Egypt, offering new hope that Cleopatra's final resting place may be discovered after over 2,000 years of uncertainty. LiDAR, a laser-based mapping tool, can scan vast areas from the air, creating high-resolution, three-dimensional maps of the ground beneath the soil. GPR, on the other hand, sends electromagnetic waves into the Earth to detect hidden voids, tunnels, and structures. Together, these technologies have proven invaluable in identifying anomalies in the ancient landscape, some of which have the potential to lead to Cleopatra's tomb. While these methods are revolutionary, they also present their own challenges. A scan might reveal a structure, but that doesn't guarantee it's a tomb or that it's linked to Cleopatra. For instance, scans at Taposiris Magna have shown intriguing results: tunnels, chambers, and shafts that suggest a complex royal burial site. But so far, no definitive evidence has been uncovered. These modern methods have made us rethink what's possible. Where traditional archaeologists once relied on manual excavation, these high-tech tools now allow them to probe deeper, faster, and more effectively than ever before. However, as the search for Cleopatra's tomb continues, we are confronted with a pressing question. Will the technology that has already revolutionized archaeology be enough to reveal the Queen's final resting place? In Taposiris Magna, an area once thought to be of limited historical significance, archaeologists are now discovering an unexpected array of objects and structures. This site is emerging as one of the most plausible locations for Cleopatra's tomb, and for good reason. The city of Taposiris Magna was a key religious center dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife. And Cleopatra's political ambitions were closely tied to the belief that she was a living goddess, an incarnation of Isis. Archaeological work in the region has uncovered numerous statues, some of which may depict Cleopatra herself, dressed as Isis. These statues are not just artistic representations. They are key symbols that suggest the queen's self-image as a divine ruler. Cleopatra's ability to align herself with the gods was central to her power, as she used these divine associations to legitimize her rule both in Egypt and in the Roman world. Additionally, the discovery of subterranean tunnels and shafts, possibly part of a larger tomb complex, has added a layer of intrigue. In ancient Egypt, burial complexes were often built with elaborate, hidden passages to protect the deceased from tomb robbers and to ensure a safe journey to the afterlife. The question now is whether these tunnels are connected to Cleopatra's burial site, or whether they simply mark a forgotten chapter in the city's history. Cleopatra's tomb was never just a burial site. It was a symbol of her political and religious strategies. As the last ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty, Cleopatra faced immense pressure to navigate the complex politics of Rome and Egypt. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were not just personal. They were calculated moves designed to secure her rule over Egypt. These alliances, in turn, were linked to her use of religious symbols, particularly her association with Isis and Osiris, which resonated deeply with both Egyptian and Roman audiences. Cleopatra's desire for a tomb that would reflect her divine status makes Taposiris Magna a compelling site for her final resting place. The site's dedication to Osiris, as well as the imagery of Isis in the statues, suggests that Cleopatra may have chosen this location deliberately. Her tomb would not just be a royal burial, but a reaffirmation of her power as a goddess. Whether she knew the tomb would be hidden for centuries or whether it was simply lost to time remains unknown. The search for Cleopatra's tomb, what lies beneath the surface? As excavations continue, the potential for discovery grows. The 21st century's technological tools may provide the breakthrough that reveals Cleopatra's tomb. However, the complexities of this search remain. The tomb's location is far from certain. Despite promising clues including statues, tunnels, and inscriptions, the tomb's precise location eludes even the most advanced archaeological techniques. Will Cleopatra's tomb be discovered at Taposiris Magna, or is it hidden elsewhere, yet to be found? As archaeologists continue to peel back the layers of Egypt's ancient landscape, one thing is clear: the search for Cleopatra's tomb is far from over. In 2009, archaeologists working at the Taposiris Magna site near Alexandria uncovered something that no one expected: a series of skeletal remains hidden within an ancient tomb. What initially appeared to be another ordinary excavation quickly spiraled into a significant mystery that has captivated the world ever since. The remains belonged to several individuals, but it was one particular burial that intrigued the team. An enigmatic female skeleton placed in an unusually elaborate burial with signs of nobility and high status. Could this be a royal figure? Could these remains belong to Cleopatra or someone intimately tied to her? Taposiris Magna, known for its religious significance as a site dedicated to Osiris, had always been on the archaeological radar, but no one had truly considered it a likely resting place for Cleopatra. Ancient texts described her death, but no definitive record ever placed her tomb. Many experts argued that Alexandria, Cleopatra's capital, was the most likely location. However, this discovery introduced an entirely new possibility. Why, after thousands of years of searching, did this tomb remain hidden until now? The first questions were straightforward but profound. Who were these individuals? And why was this burial so significant? The female skeleton stood out. She had been buried with rich grave goods, items that indicated her royal status. But these items were not enough to conclusively identify her as Cleopatra. Was she a queen? Or was this someone in Cleopatra's close circle? Perhaps one of her attendants or a relative? The most striking feature of the burial, however, was its location. The tomb lay beneath a forgotten structure, hidden by time. This alone raised suspicions. Could Cleopatra have deliberately chosen a site associated with Osiris, the god of the afterlife, to secure her place in eternity? If so, this discovery might be the key to uncovering the tomb of one of history's most iconic rulers. Yet this wasn't simply a story of royal burial rites. It was a clue that pointed toward a much larger mystery. Why was Cleopatra's tomb hidden so well? Had she chosen to obscure her final resting place to protect herself from the fate of many other rulers who had fallen into obscurity? Or was this just the beginning of a much larger archaeological riddle? As the years passed, further excavations only deepened the enigma. Was this a tomb connected to Cleopatra? Or was it merely the start of a long-forgotten dynasty's final resting place? Archaeologists continued to unearth more skeletons, each with their own story, but none of which directly answered the most crucial question. Where was Cleopatra? Taposiris Magna had become a focal point in the search for her tomb, but with each new discovery, more questions arose. The puzzle was far from solved. Researchers soon realized that the discovery of these skeletons was not an isolated event. Other nearby finds, burial sites, statues, and relics from Cleopatra's era were all pointing towards something much larger. As the excavation continued, the mystery grew. Was this merely an elaborate tomb? Or had Cleopatra, ever the master of strategy, orchestrated her burial in a way that was far more than ceremonial? The problem lay in the historical records, or rather their lack of specificity. Ancient historians had alluded to Cleopatra's death and her burial, but no definitive locations were ever mentioned. Some scholars had pointed to the royal tombs of Alexandria, while others speculated about a hidden tomb in the desert. With each new discovery at Taposiris Magna, archaeologists were faced with a challenge. Could they piece together enough evidence to definitively link this tomb to Cleopatra, or would they be left with only fragments of a story, tantalizing but elusive? What's certain, however, is that this new discovery, these mysterious skeletons, have pushed us closer to the truth than we've ever been before. But whether or not Cleopatra's tomb will be uncovered in our lifetime remains an open question. The skeletons may be the first major clue, but the real mystery is far from solved. The question remains, is Cleopatra buried here, hidden beneath the sands of time, waiting to reveal herself to the world once again? But the mystery doesn't end here. As the excavation continues and the search for further evidence intensifies, one thing remains certain: Cleopatra's tomb still eludes discovery. Could the key to finding her final resting place be hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to be uncovered? Or will the tomb of Egypt's last queen forever remain one of history's most tantalizing secrets? In the early 2000s, the desert winds whispered secrets long buried. At Taposiris Magna, a location steeped in Egyptian religious tradition, an excavation team unearthed a series of unusual artifacts. Among them, a set of human remains caught the attention of experts. The remains of a person who had been interred with golden tongues placed delicately in their mouth. At first glance, this might have seemed like an ordinary part of the burial process for the ancient elite. where golden tongues were intended to help the deceased speak in the afterlife. However, something was different about this tomb. The size and craftsmanship of the golden tongues suggested that the deceased held a position far beyond the average elite, perhaps a royal. The presence of these precious artifacts alone would not be enough to conclusively identify the tomb's occupant. But the discovery didn't stop there. As excavation progressed, more significant finds were made. Coins stamped with the image of Cleopatra herself. They were unmistakable, rare, and uniquely indicative of her reign, sparking a whirlwind of speculation. Cleopatra, the queen of Egypt who defied Rome, has long been a figure of myth. But what if the truth is far more extraordinary than we've ever imagined? The tomb of Egypt's last queen, hidden for millennia, may be found in the ruins of a forgotten city, where the truth lies buried beneath the sands. This city, Taposiris Magna, has long held secrets far greater than we ever realized. Cleopatra's rise wasn't just about charm or beauty. Behind her stunning intellect and multilingual prowess was a ruler capable of matching wits with the greatest minds of Rome. She played a dangerous game of political survival, balancing her alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony against the overwhelming power of Augustus. But beneath this political facade lay a woman determined to secure Egypt's legacy and her own. Adding to the intrigue, some of the burials unearthed contained a mix of Roman and Egyptian iconography. This blending of cultures is not only a testament to Cleopatra's complex relationships with the Roman world, but also hints at her desire to leave behind a powerful symbol of unity between Egypt and Rome. Was Cleopatra attempting to align herself with Osiris as the living goddess Isis in death, just as she had done in life? By blending Roman imperial imagery with ancient Egyptian religious symbolism? As excavations continued, Egyptologists were faced with more questions than answers. The golden tongues, symbols of divine speech, implied royal status. The coins featuring Cleopatra were indicative of her reign. But as scholars continued to sift through the evidence, they found themselves confronted with a new question. Was this the tomb of Cleopatra or of a lesser-known member of her court? To add another layer of intrigue, the burial site contained multiple chambers, some of which seemed to have been sealed off for centuries. There were distinct signs of deliberate concealment. Was this an attempt by later rulers or individuals to protect a royal tomb from looters? Or was this the final hidden resting place of Cleopatra herself? For all the clues, however, none could definitively claim Cleopatra's identity. Instead, Egyptologists found themselves looking back to ancient texts for insight. Plutarch, in his writings on Cleopatra's death, spoke of her desperate attempt to control her own narrative. Could the tomb be part of this same narrative? Had Cleopatra herself decided to hide her tomb in a place where she could reign as Osiris in the afterlife, beyond the prying eyes of her enemies? As historians and archaeologists pore over the evidence, some still argue that Taposiris Magna is not the final resting place of Cleopatra. Others, however, insist that the tomb's wealth of treasures and the intriguing symbolism surrounding its location suggest that this may be the key to one of the greatest mysteries of the ancient world. The tomb, its treasures, and the golden tongues remain shrouded in mystery. For now, all we have are the tantalizing fragments of history, pieces that could one day reveal the identity of the tomb's occupant, or perhaps leave us with a riddle that will never quite be solved. As the site continues to be excavated, every new discovery seems to raise more questions than answers. With each find, the line between myth and history blurs. Could the tomb truly be Cleopatra's? Or does the search for Egypt's last queen continue, hidden somewhere beneath the sands, just out of reach? For over 2 millennia, the world has pondered one question. Where is Cleopatra buried? The queen whose allure captivated two of Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony, and whose death marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, left behind no clear clues about her final resting place. Historians and archaeologists alike have searched tirelessly for her tomb, but it was only in the early 21st century that a breakthrough would come, not from ancient texts, but from cutting-edge technology and a willingness to rethink what we knew about Egyptian tombs. In 2005, beneath the grounds of Taposiris Magna, an ancient temple dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife, a hidden chamber was discovered, one that had been sealed for centuries. At first, the chamber seemed unremarkable, offering little more than the remains of forgotten souls. Yet as archaeologists dug deeper, they uncovered a pair of burials, two bodies placed side by side in a structure that seemed too significant to be coincidental. This was no ordinary tomb. This was a potential royal burial site that could hold the answers to one of history's most enduring mysteries. The scans revealed more than just the burial of two individuals. They unveiled a double burial niche, a structure designed for the eternal rest of two people intertwined by fate. The niche was far more than a burial plot. It was a monument to the union of two worlds, that of Cleopatra and Mark Antony. Both figures, of course, met tragic ends in the aftermath of the Battle of Actium in 31 BC, their suicides marking the final chapter of Egypt's reign as an independent kingdom. But could this chamber be their final resting place? Or was it the tomb of another royal couple whose fate mirrored that of Egypt's last monarch? The sarcophagus inside the chamber was as striking as the burial itself. Intricately designed, it blended Greco-Roman elements with Egyptian motifs. This was no ordinary funerary object, but a cultural fusion that symbolized Cleopatra's own identity, a queen of Egypt, yet deeply entangled in the political machinations of Rome. The sarcophagus was the physical manifestation of her reign, her relationships, and the enduring legacy of her rule. Cleopatra's alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were not mere romantic entanglements. They were calculated moves to secure Egypt's place in the world order. The sarcophagus design, combining Greek and Egyptian styles, suggested the blending of these two worlds in her final resting place, an appropriate reflection of her life's ambition. It was a fusion of not just cultures, but of politics, power, and mythology. Plutarch and Cassius Dio, ancient historians who wrote extensively about Cleopatra's life and death, offer tantalizing clues about her fate. According to Plutarch, Cleopatra's death was a result of her despair following Antony's defeat. She and Antony chose to die by suicide, each one choosing to die on their own terms in the face of certain defeat. Dio adds that Cleopatra died in the arms of a Roman servant, a poignant end for a queen whose life had been defined by her relationships with powerful men. However, despite these dramatic accounts, neither Plutarch nor Dio gives a definitive answer about where Cleopatra was buried. Could this chamber beneath Taposiris Magna, with its distinctive sarcophagus and double burial, finally provide an answer to the question that has lingered for centuries? Taposiris Magna, the site of the hidden chamber, is not just an ordinary burial site. It was a place of worship dedicated to Osiris, the god of the afterlife, and is associated with the idea of resurrection. For Cleopatra, whose reign was marked by a series of attempts to align herself with the gods of Egypt, while also maneuvering through Roman political alliances, this was a powerful and symbolic choice of burial location. The fact that Taposiris Magna was associated with Osiris could indicate her desire to be remembered as not just a ruler, but a divine figure, one whose legacy transcended the political chaos of her time. While the discovery of the chamber beneath Taposiris Magna is a monumental step in the search for Cleopatra's tomb, many questions remain unanswered. Could this chamber truly be the final resting place of Cleopatra and Mark Antony? The evidence continues to mount, but the final verdict is still elusive. And with new archaeological methods like LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar revealing more and more of the site, the mystery only deepens. What lies beneath the sands of Egypt? The tomb of Cleopatra, perhaps closer to being found than ever before, or another hidden treasure waiting to rewrite the history books? The search for Cleopatra's tomb continues, but one thing is certain. With every discovery, we are uncovering a piece of the lost world of Egypt, one layer at a time. And with each layer, the truth inches ever closer to the surface. The artifacts found within the burial site beneath Taposiris Magna are not mere trinkets. They are the echoes of an ancient and powerful soul, a queen who defied the passage of time with her ambition, intellect, and divine claims. As archaeologists pry open the layers of Egypt's forgotten history, each discovery seems to point toward a deeper, more mystical side of Cleopatra, one that has been obscured by centuries of myth and manipulation. But to truly understand her, we must begin with the context in which these objects were buried. Gold, scarabs, and coins bearing Cleopatra's likeness. At first glance, these items seem like typical royal burial goods, meant to honor a queen in the afterlife. Yet, their strategic placement and symbolism suggests something far more deliberate. It's easy to assume that Cleopatra's wealth and power would be reflected in her grave, but the items found here aren't just royal treasures. The scarabs, for example, represent not just wealth, but rebirth, symbolizing her desire to be reborn in the divine realm as the goddess Isis herself. These were not mere offerings. They were tools of resurrection. It is worth noting that some of these scarabs feature inscriptions in both Greek and Egyptian, a rare combination that signifies Cleopatra's dual identity, a queen who seamlessly merged her Hellenistic heritage with the rich, mystic traditions of Egypt. This was not just a monarch's burial, it was a carefully crafted narrative, telling the story of a ruler who was at once a goddess and a political strategist. But did Cleopatra view these treasures as mere symbols? Or did she see them as actual tools, something that could help her transcend the mortal realm? The artifacts leave us with more questions than answers. And one thing is certain, Cleopatra's vision of immortality was far from simple. Among the most perplexing finds were the papyri, some still partially intact, others fragile and crumbling with age. These scrolls carry a haunting message. On the surface, they appear to be standard Egyptian prayers, invoking gods like Osiris and Isis, asking for protection and rebirth. But as scholars began to decode the texts, they realized that the language wasn't merely liturgical, it was political. Cleopatra's own words were woven into the papyri, carefully constructed to reflect her vision of divine kingship. What's more intriguing is that the scrolls include references to her son, Caesarion, whom Cleopatra sought to raise as both a political heir and a divine figure. Was Caesarion meant to inherit Cleopatra's divine right as ruler? These papyri suggest that Cleopatra believed her lineage was of divine origin, and her afterlife would be a continuation of her power. These scrolls aren't just religious texts. They are a political manifesto for a queen who saw her rule as part of a larger cosmic plan. The most mysterious aspect of this discovery lies in the hieroglyphs. Some of these symbols have never been seen before in the recorded history of Egypt, adding an air of secrecy to the tomb's contents. For centuries, Hieroglyphs have been understood as symbols of communication and magic, but these texts seem to carry an added weight. Messages from Cleopatra herself, encoded to preserve her power and authority in the afterlife. Egyptologists are divided on the interpretation of these symbols. Some believe that they are spells meant to ensure Cleopatra's immortal reign over Egypt. Others speculate that they are rituals designed to transfer her divine essence into a new form of eternal life. These hieroglyphs speak not just of death, but of a transformation, a metamorphosis that Cleopatra herself would have undergone in her passage from queen to goddess. Yet what does this say about the queen's legacy? Was Cleopatra's vision of herself as a divine ruler so strong that she crafted a burial site that would allow her influence to transcend death? Or was she attempting to send a message to the world, ensuring that her legacy would never be forgotten, even if her physical form did not endure? As scholars debate the meaning of these findings, one thing is certain: Cleopatra's tomb is not simply a burial site, but a deeply encoded message, waiting to be fully uncovered. What do the artifacts truly reveal about her? And perhaps more crucially, what will future expeditions uncover about the Queen's final resting place? The journey to unearth Cleopatra's legacy has only just begun. Every new artifact, every new piece of evidence, brings us closer to understanding the Queen's vision of immortality. And as each mystery is solved, we find ourselves drawn deeper into a narrative that blurs the lines between history and legend. Is Cleopatra's tomb the gateway to her ultimate ascension? Or is it a powerful reminder that even the mightiest rulers are subject to time? The search continues, one clue at a time. The search for Cleopatra's tomb is the stuff of legends, fueling imaginations and inspiring generations of scholars. But what if the tomb isn't just a myth? What if, hidden beneath centuries of dust and forgotten by time, we've uncovered clues that point directly to the final resting place of one of history's most iconic women? This isn't just about discovering a tomb. It's about unearthing a legend and the legacy of the last queen of Egypt. The journey begins in 2004 when Dr. Kathleen Martinez, a persistent and dedicated archaeologist, proposed the idea that Cleopatra's tomb could be found beneath the sands of Taposiris Magna, a temple complex near Alexandria. But such claims were met with skepticism by many, including the renowned Dr. Zahi Hawass, who argued that Cleopatra's tomb would have likely been desecrated in the aftermath of her death. Still, Martinez's theories gained traction, driven by several tantalizing clues: a blend of Greco-Roman and Egyptian architectural features and artifacts resembling those of Cleopatra's time. With skepticism and excitement intertwined, the excavation began. But were they truly on the right track? The first step toward verification came with the application of carbon dating on bones and organic matter discovered in the tomb. The results, still under analysis, suggested that the burial site dated back to the late 1st century BC, roughly the same time Cleopatra ruled Egypt. This would in theory place the tomb within Cleopatra's era. But was it hers? Or were these just the remains of another royal from her time? At this stage, the mystery deepens. Carbon dating confirms the time frame, but doesn't pinpoint the identity. Forensic examination is needed to move forward. With advances in DNA testing, researchers hope to find definitive proof of the tomb's occupant. DNA comparisons between the remains at Taposiris Magna and Cleopatra's known bloodline could potentially provide a match. However, the situation is fraught with complications. Most of Cleopatra's family members were either killed or scattered across different parts of Egypt and Rome. Even if there are DNA traces that seem promising, could they be from Cleopatra's child, Caesarion, or a different family member altogether? And what if DNA testing fails? What happens to the theory that this is Cleopatra's tomb? As the scientific results pour in, the debate intensifies. Dr. Zahi Hawass, one of Egypt's most famous archaeologists, has remained cautious about the findings. For him, the idea that Cleopatra's tomb could be intact is an outlier. He raises significant doubts regarding the preservation of such a tomb, considering the political turmoil that followed Cleopatra's death. But Dr. Kathleen Martinez, with unyielding determination, argues that this discovery, with its carefully hidden chamber and Greco-Egyptian fusion artifacts, cannot be ignored. Her arguments are compelling, but the scholarly divide only intensifies, adding another layer to the mystery. To solve the puzzle, the tomb's material culture, the burial goods, becomes critical. The relics discovered within the chamber offer vital insights into the individual's identity. Coins bearing Cleopatra's image, scarabs with hieroglyphs inscribed with royal names, and lavish burial items point to a woman of immense power and wealth. But could these artifacts simply be ceremonial? Could they belong to another royal, a lesser-known figure in Cleopatra's court? The cliffhanger remains. The question is far from answered. What if the treasures are not those of Cleopatra, but a lesser royal from the Ptolemaic dynasty? Each artifact holds a clue, but none provide a direct confirmation. The mystery surrounding Cleopatra's final resting place becomes even more complex. As historians and archaeologists dig deeper into the remains and artifacts, the question shifts. Who was this woman, this queen, who could so easily have been mistaken for Cleopatra herself? The DNA testing, the carbon dating, and the historical records seem to be leading us down a path, but it's one fraught with ambiguity. Could this be another member of Cleopatra's family? Could it be someone with a personal connection to the queen, perhaps a close confidant or a daughter who died young? Perhaps in the end, the true answer will only be revealed through further excavation, testing, and most importantly, time. The quest for Cleopatra's tomb is far from over. Every new discovery adds a layer of complexity to a story centuries in the making. As modern technology brings us closer to the truth, the question remains, is this Cleopatra's tomb, or is it something else entirely? The search will continue, and with it, the legend of Cleopatra grows ever more enigmatic. Cleopatra's political legacy was not simply a casualty of her personal relationships with Caesar and Antony, but a direct challenge to the Roman imperial narrative. After her defeat, Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, needed to solidify his power not only through military victories, but also through ideological control. Cleopatra, as an independent monarch who had successfully navigated the complex web of Hellenistic politics, represented everything that Augustus feared. A rival who could command loyalty not just with armies, but with intellect, diplomacy, and charisma. Augustus needed to diminish her in the public eye, and so began a campaign of erasure. What is striking, however, is that this was not just the political maneuver of one emperor. This was a deliberate, long-term construction of a narrative that painted Cleopatra as a seductress, a manipulator, and a foil to Rome's glorious male leaders. The question we must ask is, was Cleopatra's erasure a strategic decision to protect Rome's image, or an inherent reflection of a culture unwilling to allow women to hold such power? The resurgence of Cleopatra in modern times is a fascinating study in the reclamation of a narrative. While scholars and feminists have played a key role in reinterpreting her role in history, Cleopatra's revival coincides with the broader decolonization movements of the mid-20th century. Her story has become one, not of a passive victim, but of a powerful, self-possessed leader who leveraged the power of statecraft and charisma in a world that sought to undermine her. However, the modern fascination with Cleopatra is not without its contradictions. On one hand, she's become a feminist symbol, but on the other, her power is often reduced to a set of stereotypes about her beauty or her romantic relationships. It is crucial to consider the ways in which modern portrayals of Cleopatra, whether in literature or film, both reclaim and reframe her legacy. How do these new representations both challenge and reinforce the narratives imposed by the ancient sources? In literature, Cleopatra's image has undergone significant transformations. Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra presents a complex, tragic figure, but one who remains in many ways passive, caught in the currents of the men around her. This reflects the ongoing struggle of women in history to have their agency recognized. Yet works such as Stacy Schiff's biography Cleopatra, a life push against these stereotypes by providing a multidimensional portrayal of Cleopatra, based on historical evidence that paints her as a formidable strategist. In popular culture, Cleopatra's influence is pervasive. From the cinematic grandeur of Elizabeth Taylor's Cleopatra, 1963, to more recent portrayals in series like Rome, 2005. Yet her portrayal in the media is as much about our contemporary world as it is about the past. How has the evolving portrayal of Cleopatra in film and literature reflected changing attitudes toward female empowerment? And how has she become, perhaps, a symbol for the global South, particularly in post-colonial contexts? Ultimately, Cleopatra's story is not just about her reign. It is a lens through which we can examine how history is written, who gets to write it, and what narratives we choose to elevate. Cleopatra's story has been told through the lens of Roman imperialism for too long, reducing her to a mere character in the story of men like Caesar and Antony. But as modern historians, archaeologists, and filmmakers step into the narrative, they challenge the old narrative by presenting Cleopatra not as an accessory to power, but as a ruler in her own right. The challenge, however, remains. Can we truly know Cleopatra? And if we do, who will control the story of her life? The question of her legacy is not merely academic. It resonates today as we continue to confront issues of power, gender, and historical ownership. The story of Cleopatra is one that continually evolves, shaped by the lens through which we view her. Whether as a feminist icon, a cultural symbol, or a political leader, Cleopatra represents the complexity of history itself, where power, politics, and gender intertwine in ways that challenge the narratives written by the victors. As her tomb remains hidden, her legacy continues to be uncovered, layer by layer, revealing not only who Cleopatra was, but also who gets to tell her story. This reclamation of Cleopatra's narrative is about more than her. It is about who we choose to remember and why. The mysteries surrounding Cleopatra's tomb may one day be solved, but the ongoing question of how her legacy is shaped and reinterpreted will continue to resonate for generations to come. The tomb of Cleopatra, a figure whose life remains enveloped in myth and mystery, is not merely a structure of stone and dust. It is a statement, perhaps the final, most enduring one she ever made. The inscriptions found within, newly revealed by sophisticated technology, raise more questions than they answer. As modern archaeologists push the boundaries of what is known, they uncover symbols, words, and designs that may be the key to understanding Cleopatra's ultimate vision of herself. What, then, was Cleopatra's tomb meant to convey? The delicate carvings in the chamber's walls, newly exposed through 3D scans, offer fragmented glimpses into the heart of a woman who had long held control over her own narrative. We know she identified herself with Isis, a divine figure representing resurrection, fertility, and power. Could these symbols, her symbolic association with the goddess, be a part of her vision to be remembered not only as a queen, but as a deity? Or were these inscriptions her assertion of defiance, her attempt to transcend the military defeat she suffered at the hands of Rome? Historians are divided, and these discoveries provide no easy answers. At first glance, the inscriptions seem to convey a message of eternal power, perhaps an affirmation of her place in history, attempting to shape her legacy even as she succumbed to Rome's rise. Yet as experts such as Dr. Kathleen Martinez and Dr. Zahi Hawass weigh in, they reveal an unsettling complexity. Some scholars argue that these inscriptions may have been crafted as a direct political message, a reflection of Cleopatra's strategic manipulation of her own image. They point to the use of Greco-Roman architectural styles within the tomb, an effort to intertwine Egypt's ancient past with the political realities of her time. But what about the objects discovered with the tomb? The burial goods, gold, papyri, scarabs, and scrolls? These relics are not merely treasures for the afterlife. They offer tangible insight into Cleopatra's spiritual worldview, a worldview that blended Egyptian religious practices with Roman influence. The presence of papyri containing untranslatable hieroglyphics suggests she was deeply invested in preserving Egypt's sacred texts, even in death. Could these scrolls, some of which are still too fragile to fully examine, hold ancient knowledge? Perhaps a hidden message, a final act of preservation for Egypt's sacred traditions. As Dr. Martinez contemplates, these goods reflect Cleopatra's efforts to send a message beyond the tomb. What will the future understand of her rule? Her use of sacred and royal symbols tied to both Egypt's divine kingship and the Roman imperial order hints at the complexity of her dual identity. Could these inscriptions and artifacts help us finally piece together Cleopatra's ultimate purpose? A monarch who straddled two worlds, one ancient and Egyptian, the other emergent and Roman? Yet these elements, while groundbreaking, do not tell the whole story. Could Cleopatra have chosen her burial site to send a statement not just of personal power, but of resistance? The alignment of the tomb with the Temple of Osiris, the god of death and resurrection, suggests a link to Egypt's cosmic order, a deliberate act to place her legacy within the mythological cycles of the land. But there is still uncertainty. As the tomb's true contents continue to reveal themselves, one question will dominate. What, if anything, can Cleopatra's final resting place tell us about how she saw herself in the eyes of eternity? Was her message one of strength, of a woman who took control of her narrative? Or was it the legacy of a queen who knew that in the end, she had no power to escape the grip of Roman destiny? These answers are still buried, yet within the chambers of Cleopatra's tomb, there may be a message that has yet to speak its final truth. Will the tomb's secrets ultimately answer the question of Cleopatra's true legacy, or will it deepen the mystery even further? As the dust settles on centuries of myth, propaganda, and scholarly debates, Cleopatra's story is being resurrected before our very eyes. The discovery of her potential burial site at Taposiris Magna, along with the haunting remnants of ancient artifacts, promises to unravel the final chapter of a life that has captivated the world for over 2 millennia. But the question remains, is this the tomb of the queen who defined an era, or is it a false lead in the labyrinth of history? What does the resurrection of Cleopatra's tomb really mean for us today? For decades, Cleopatra has been one of history's most enigmatic figures. Shaped and distorted by the hands of poets, historians, and filmmakers, her image has morphed into one of seduction and scandal, a tragic lover consumed by power. But the woman behind the myth is much more than that. She was a ruler of intellect, strategy, an immense political acumen, a queen who held her own against the might of Rome. As the fragments of her tomb begin to reveal more about her, we are forced to reconsider everything we thought we knew about her. In a world that often diminishes the roles of women in history, Cleopatra's resurrection carries powerful cultural significance. The unearthing of her legacy provides an opportunity to examine how history has overlooked or misrepresented female figures who wielded real power. Why has Cleopatra been so often reduced to a romantic figure, while her political achievements remain overshadowed? What if the key to understanding her influence lies not in her relationships with powerful men, but in her ability to rule as an independent and assertive monarch in her own right? Her impact on modern culture is undeniable. From literature to film, Cleopatra's story continues to inspire and provoke. Yet the myth of the seductress has often overshadowed her true achievements. This revival, driven by the uncovering of her tomb, allows us to separate the woman from the legend. As scholars piece together the significance of her burial goods, the gold, papyri, and inscriptions, we begin to see a glimpse of a queen who was not simply an object of desire, but a mastermind of Egypt's survival amidst a rapidly changing world. The tomb itself, with its combination of Greco-Egyptian fusion, speaks to her complex identity as both a ruler of Egypt and a player in the Roman political sphere. But there is still so much we don't know. Could the buried inscriptions inside the tomb reveal a political statement, a direct response to the empire that ultimately defeated her? Was Cleopatra's burial site designed as a monument to her defiance? Or could it contain secret messages to future generations? The more archaeologists and historians uncover, the more questions arise. As we move into a new era of technological advances, the ability to scan and analyze remains with precision has opened new doors in the search for Cleopatra's tomb. Yet even with the most sophisticated methods, questions linger about how much we can truly learn from the past. Could Cleopatra's final resting place become more than just a place of archaeological interest? Could it in fact challenge how we see power and influence in the ancient world? And does this resurrection of Cleopatra reflect something deeper about our own time, our ongoing search for the past truths, and our attempt to rewrite history in a way that honors all figures, regardless of gender or legacy? As the final pieces of the puzzle come into place, the question remains: what will Cleopatra's tomb teach us about how we define power, legacy, and history today? Will the answers hidden beneath the sands of Egypt change the way we perceive one of history's greatest and most misunderstood queens? Or will her legacy continue to be shaped by the myths we've created, rather than the truth we have yet to uncover? In the search for Cleopatra's tomb, we aren't just uncovering the past. We are rewriting the story of a queen who, despite being lost to history, refuses to be forgotten. But the real question is, who gets to tell her story? And more importantly, how will we choose to remember her? If you've been captivated by Cleopatra's story and the mystery surrounding her tomb, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more fascinating historical discoveries. Don't miss out on the latest updates. Join us on this journey to uncover the past and uncover the truth about history's most legendary figures.